Hi everyone, I've just put together this video that would hopefully address some of the current issues that you've been having in getting started with your persuasive review, getting some practice in terms of writing effective introductions. And basically this video is just here to address some of the concerns that you've voiced in the last couple of weeks in class, some of the things that I've been seeing in your writing, and hopefully this video serves as a way to basically help you to write an effective introduction and to know what an effective introduction looks like, and to help you to compare these exemplar pieces of writing to your own writing and the practice writing that you've been doing in class in the last couple of weeks. So one of the issues that I've been hearing people say is I'm unsure of how to actually implement persuasive techniques into my writing. And this is pretty common because we are quite used to writing essays, or we're used to the academic writing style, that we forget how to actually implement persuasive techniques and how to make our writing sound interesting so that your reader doesn't fall asleep while reading your persuasive review. So some solutions that I have for you, okay? The first thing is you need to practice. It's never going to happen overnight. The brain learns through repetition, basically, and that's how our memory becomes more and more solid over time. So you need to practice it. It's not just going to happen, and words will not just fall out of the air. So one of the things that I've said is you need to try and use some persuasive techniques. Use some of the ones that I've given you in your persuasive writing guide and practice making your sentences sound more persuasive by choosing perhaps onomatopoeia or perhaps alliteration, and have a go at actually implementing those persuasive techniques into a sentence or two. So that's the first thing. Practice makes perfect. Secondly, you need to actually consider what's your stance on the question that's being asked. So on the day of the exam, you need to be able to say, am I on this side of the argument or that side of the argument? So for example, and this is something we've been looking at in class ourselves, why do you believe that gender or social class can shape a person in the world today? So why do you think that? If you think, yes, I believe that we are shaped by our own gender and the social standing that we have, why do you think that? Give me some reasons. So you need to be able to give me your opinion, I guess, and it should be clear which side of the fence you're sitting on. The same thing goes for if you oppose that statement. If you don't think that gender and social class can shape the people that we are today, then you need to tell me why, and you need to make it clear that you don't agree with that, okay? So there's some solutions that I have, but also when you've decided why or why not, do you think it's for better or do you think it's for worse? So if society basically treats women a certain way and that shapes women into the people that they end up being, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? And then once you've got some kind of argument or some kind of opinion, you can then start to write about that with some reasoning. So practice, okay? Consider what's my opinion on the actual question being asked, and is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? All right. Now, let's get into some writing, guys. So how can you turn your sentences, really boring sentences, into engaging and persuasive sentences? So, for example, have a look at this sentence. So it says, the novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen was written in the 19th century England and displays themes such as gender and social class. Now that's pretty boring. Are the facts there? Yeah, the facts are there, but it's still pretty boring to read and to listen to, and it's definitely not persuasive. So how would you be able to turn that into something that is persuasive? Have a look at this next sentence and compare them for me. So the next sentence, renowned for her soap opera-like narratives in which gender and social class often emerge, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice still dazzles audiences with its classic portrayal of 19th century England. Now, if you compare the first sentence to the second sentence, and they're both topic sentences, they've just been worded differently because the purpose of why they're written is different. They're trying to do different things for their audience. The first one is merely to present the facts. The second one is to present the facts in a way that's persuasive. So if you look at the first sentence and the second sentence, they've still got the exact same facts in there. It's Jane Austen, the title is Pride and Prejudice, and it was written in the 19th century England. Now, obviously, the first sentence also has gender and social class. Can you see gender and social class mentioned in the second sentence? Yes, you can. So in which gender and social class? So it's just about taking the facts and trying to tell us those facts or your opinion in a way that sounds a little bit more punchy and a little bit more engaging for your reader. All right. So what I'd like you to do, and this is just an activity I'm going to give you some time for, is I'm going to put some sentences on the screen and I want you to rewrite them. They're going to be quite dull and quite boring, but I want you to rewrite the sentence and transform it into something that's actually engaging and persuasive. So we're kind of going from boredom towards exciting, okay? And it can be simple in the way that I had just done that on the screen before with those other two examples. So, your first sentence. This essay will explore how gender and social class can shape people for worse by analysing Darcy and Lady Catherine. So I want you to think of one thing. Is your task an essay? Number one. Number two, how can I make this more persuasive? So think about what you've just seen in the previous example and give yourself some time to rewrite that sentence and make it a little bit more punchy, a little bit more colourful, and more persuasive. And try and see if you can keep the same facts in there, but deliver those facts in a way that actually makes me want to listen to what you're writing or what you're saying. Okay. Another sentence. Now that you've had a go at one, let's do another one. Here's your boring sentence. Pride and Prejudice is a novel about social status and gender imbalance, and it's written by Jane Austen. Pretty boring, pretty straight up. I want you to rewrite that and bring across, have a look in your persuasive techniques guide because you've got it now. If you want to have a go at a particular persuasive technique, maybe try one that you've been having trouble with. You can throw a couple of persuasive techniques into here, and let's rewrite this second sentence. Okay, I've gone a little bit further now, Year 12, and what I have on the screen here is basically an excerpt or an extract from a paragraph that was written by a student. Now, if you have a look at this, and I'm going to read this out to you, I want you to look closely for what you think about the way that this extract is structured. And also, how persuasive is it, and can you see any persuasive techniques? And if you can see some persuasive techniques, I want you to write them down as I'm reading. An example of how social class shaped people for worse is when the Bingleys, who are from the upper class, are described as proud and conceited. They were rather handsome, had been educated in one of the first private seminaries in town, had a fortune of £20,000, were in the habit of spending more than they ought and of associating with people of rank, and were therefore, in every respect, entitled to think well of themselves and meanly of others. This shows that the higher a person's social class, the more haughty you were. So, what do you think about the structure of this extract? Obviously, it's not a whole paragraph. Do you think that it's effectively structured? If we're thinking of Peel, does this section of Peel flow effectively? And is it persuasive, and what persuasive techniques do you see? So you might want to have another quick little read. All right. So what you're seeing in front of you is basically quite similar to the topic sentences that I showed a couple of minutes ago. So are the facts here? Yes, the facts are here. Is there some evidence used from the novel? Yes, there is some evidence. Has the evidence been introduced? Yes, it definitely has. And is there some kind of concluding idea? Yes, there is. What's missing is that this isn't particularly exciting or engaging for your reader. So even though everything that this person is saying is right, if we're looking at criteria A of the task, and criteria A is to do with the genre, so how well are you using conventions and genre patterns. Genre patterns means how well are you using persuasive techniques and the conventions of a persuasive review, all right? That's the genre that you're basically trying to show me that you understand how to write in this genre. So, is this person achieving well in criteria A? Do you think that they're showcasing to me that they understand how to write in a persuasive manner and conduct a persuasive review? I would say no. I would say that their knowledge of the novel, perhaps for criteria 3, is quite good, and they're using evidence well and analysing their quotes well, their aesthetic features. But criteria A, in terms of you using, the student using persuasive techniques, it's really not happening here. So here's how to change that. I want you to take what we've just looked at here in this extract and compare it with this one. In today's contemporary society, we often frown upon the Donald Trumps and elite snobs of the world, and let's face it, to some extent, with riches comes ego. And, dear friends, pride and prejudice is no different. This notion that social class can ultimately worsen an individual is seen when the Bingleys, who are from the upper class, are described as proud and conceited. They were rather handsome, had been educated in one of the first private seminaries in town, had a fortune of £20,000, were in the habit of spending more than they ought and of associating with people of rank, and were therefore, in every respect, entitled to think well of themselves and meanly of others. To mere mortals like ourselves, this shows that the higher one's social class, the more haughty you are permitted to be, ultimately widening the gap between the rich, the poor, and the poorer. Now, already as I'm reading that, you can hear that my tone of voice was very different in comparison to the way that I read the previous example. That's because the way that this extract has been written, it requires that. It requires tone of voice. And that's really the difference between your academic writing style and your persuasive review. You've got to adopt a tone of voice, and it will change. It's not always going to be the same tone of voice, all right? But it makes you want to listen. It makes you want to listen to what I'm saying because I'm actually talking to you. So have a look on the screen, and I want you to spend 30 seconds writing down any particular phrase or a set of words where you see a persuasive technique. Bonus points if you can actually identify what that persuasive technique is, but at least tell me which parts of this paragraph extract are persuasive and why does it persuade you, or why does it make you perk up and listen more so than the previous example. So looking for some persuasive techniques, note them down. Maybe perhaps there's just some effective language use here as well. Okay, so basically, guys, what's important, if we go back to the previous slide or the previous part of the screen, is you can see that this section here, this extract, is much shorter than the next extract, and that's because when you're writing persuasively, you may be using shorter, sharper sentences. You might be using a few colloquialisms, which is a little bit of casual language here and there. You will be using much more inclusive language as well, and I think that's the biggest difference here with these two examples. Straight away, it's we often frown. Let's face it, dear friends, to mere mortals like ourselves. So when you use that kind of terminology, straight away the person reading it feels like they're being included in what you're saying. In the previous example, we really didn't see that at all. It was just, here's the example, here's the evidence, and this is what it shows. So I want you to think about that when you go back and look at some of the writing you've done in class or for homework. Think about, are you doing this in example A, or do you think you're gearing more towards this second example? And even if you are gearing towards this second example, that's great, but I want you to think of how effective how effectively are you writing at the moment in terms of your level of persuasion, your language use as well? Do you think that sometimes your language is a little bit too casual? Notice there's a lot of punctuation, guys, as well in this paragraph. And you do need to be able to showcase that, because criteria B is all about how well you use your grammar, your modality,